Hi everybody, my name is Matt Brealey, and in this series of videos we're going to be taking a look at the awesome new feature set available to you in Mari 1.4. Now before we do, I quickly want to introduce you to our model that we'll be using for most of those features, so say hello. I'm going to quickly use our I hotkey to bring up the wonderful palette that gives us the objects, shaders and channels all in one helpful view. And inside of here you can see that we have a single object in this scene. We have our two shaders, our one that we can see now, so our shader that we have constructed ourselves, and of course Mari's default shader, which will always show you the selected channel. And as you can see, we've got multiple channels in here giving us this final effect. And we're going to be utilizing some of those channels to show you guys the features of Mari 1.4. So with that said, let's jump right in. The first feature I want to talk about involves PSD files. Now when we go and talk to Mari artists, sometimes we find that somewhere in their department someone might put together an initial texture set in 2D alone within Photoshop or another program that can deal with PSD files. They then want to take this data and utilize it in here within Mari, where you can actually do your proper high-res texture painting. Now at the moment in Mari 1.3, the best way to do that really is to bake down your Photoshop layer stack and bring it in as a single image. However, Mari 1.4 allows you to bring in an entire Photoshop layer stack into Mari automatically. So let's take a quick look at that. So over here in Photoshop, I have this map created for us. If I put the wireframes over it, this is basically the eye section of our ogre. And in here on the bottom right hand corner, you can see that we have really 5 layers going from the pupil to the background color. And we want Mari to bring in each one of these layers individually into a separate channel so that we can paint, warp, distort, do whatever we want with it before putting it into our final shader. So what I'm going to do is head back, of course, into Mari to begin with. And over here in my channels list, I've created a blank channel called PSD Import. Now in actuality, you can really right-click any of these channels whatsoever, but I just want to be clear here. I'm just going to right-click this channel and go Import. Now in this box we get to import a file per patch on our object. Now if we wanted to import this for the entire thing, of course we would fill in a file path for each one of these little paths. However, we only want to do the eyes. So I'm going to quickly cancel out of this. I'm going to go over to my UV view and make sure I know exactly which patches the eyes sit on. So as you can see, we're on patch 1011 and 1021. So back over here in our PSD import, again I'm going to right click and go Import. And on 1011 and 1021, I want to browse to and locate that PSD file. So I'm going to quickly come over here. I'm going to go into my Mari, 1.4, Elements, I, PSD Eye Texture, and click Open. Now, of course, I can come in here and just quickly copy and paste that into 1021 as well. And then with that done, I'm going to come down and click All. Now at this point, what Mari's going to do is look at every single layer in that PSD file and bring it in as a brand new channel accurately named here at the top of our channels list. Now to see this, I need to switch over to my default shader, so I'm just going to quickly hit my I shortcut and bring that up. And then once we click through every single one of these layers, you can see it looks exactly as it did within Photoshop. So at this point, we can paint, we can warp, we can use all of Mari's excellent tools to do whatever we want on a per layer basis with these brand new channels. Also, if we now want to see the result of these channels as they were within Photoshop a minute ago, we can go over to the shaders palette, and in here we have a brand new option called Create Layered Shader. Now when I click this, Mari is automatically going to go through and create a shader for us based upon those layers that are imported into channels, and it's going to take all of the blend modes into account as well. So now we can see exactly what we saw in Photoshop, but we of course have the functionality that comes with using Mari's awesome tools with the different channels of data. At this point, if I switch back over into my orthographic view, you can see that our eyes are indeed shaded up exactly as we want, but of course the rest of our shader has disappeared. So at this point, I want to basically merge the two shaders together, and I'm going to do that by baking down our brand new shader. So I'm going to click that in the shaders list. I'm going to right click it and go to Bake Shader. And inside of here, we can get all of the different components that we want. I'm going to go for the unlit component. So I'm going to click the Bake button, the Bake checkbox, and I'm just going to name this Eyes Diffuse Bake. Now with that done, I'm going to click All Visible Patches, and this is going to be baked down into a brand new channel within our channels list, and I'll show you that in a second. Here we go. So inside of here we have Eyes Diffuse Bake, so all that's required now is for me to add this into our existing shader setup. So I'm going to use our I hotkey again. You can see I'm a big fan of that guy. I'm going to come over to our original comp shader where we can't see the eyes. I'm going to go into our shaders list, and down here in our shader module stack, I'm going to add a new shader module. I'm just going to add in a base diffuse and click OK. And in our diffuse at the top here, I'm going to click Current Channel, and set that, of course, to ice diffuse bake. Now at this point we have all of the different elements in here taking full advantage of that PSD import workflow. So that is the first brilliant feature in the brand new release of 1.4. Using Mari 1.4's brand new Layered Painting Project and Layered Painting Unproject tools, you can very easily send data from your Mari project over to Photoshop to be worked on. Now in this example I'm going to be doing just that to add in a tattoo on the back of our ogre's head. So I'm going to zoom right into the section that I want. I'm then going to come up to the camera menu and click Layered Painting Projection Settings. Now inside of this pop-up we get all of the channels that we have inside our current project, and we want to make sure that the channels we want to send to Photoshop are selected. Now in this case I want to send 2 channels over, so I'm going to select the diffuse main and the wet map channel. Now underneath our channels list we have access to the resolution of the file when it goes over to Photoshop, the path to the PSD file itself, and also the path to our image editor, as Mari is automatically going to load that up for us and open up the PSD file. So I'm going to click OK for now. I'm going to come back up to camera and click Layered Painting Unproject. Now when I do that, a few things are going to happen. Mari's going to take a snapshot through the buffer in Mari and save that out as a PSD file. And that file is then opened up in Photoshop for us to work with. Now down here in the bottom right hand corner we of course have the layers stack, and inside of this you can see we've got currently 6 layers in this project. Now right now everything's looking a little bit dark because of our wet map in here, so I'm temporarily going to turn that off while I'll explain the rest of the stack. Now you might see that we've got 4 locked layers in here and 2 unlocked layers, and this is Mari's way of telling you the layers that you need to paint on in order for this process to work. So going top from bottom, first of all we have a wireframe layer which describes the poly layout of the object. However, I don't need this right now, so I'm going to turn that off. Underneath this we have a lighting layer which describes any additional lighting we've done within Mari, but that too I need to turn off for now. Now at the very bottom of your layer stack you're going to have 2 layers for every channel that you imported from Mari into Photoshop, and the naming conventions here are quite important. So for instance, I've got a locked layer at the bottom here called Diffuse Main, which is the name of the channel we brought in from Mari and the channel that we're looking at right now. Now above the Diffuse Main layer, I've got a blank layer unlocked, which is called Diffuse Main Paint. And you can think of this as a container for any information you want Mari to bake down into the Diffuse Main channel. So to go over that again with the wet map, we have the wet map, which is the information coming over from Mari. Then above that we have Wet Map Paint, a clear channel into which we're going to put any information we want Mari to bake down into the Wet Map channel. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and bring in a little bit of information I've already created. So the Mari logo, because of course all ogres love Mari. So I'm going to copy that guy, I'm going to come back into my export, and making sure that I'm on the Diffuse Main Paint layer, I'm just going to paste that into place. Now I also want to apply this into my black and white wet map layer. So I'm going to select that guy and hit paste. I'm then going to come up to the image menu, adjustments, and come down to hue and saturation. I'm going to desaturate it completely and just adjust the lightness a little tiny bit, and this is going to give us a nice little bit of reflectivity on top of the logo. So with that done, I'm going to click OK, and at this point we want to push all of this information back over into Mari. So I'm going to save my Photoshop file, head back over into Mari and come up to the camera menu, inside of which we've got the Layered Painting Project option. Now when I click this, Mari's going to look inside that Photoshop file and bring back in any of the information that we put into those 2 container layers. So we can already see the update in our Diffuse Main layer, but to make sure that our wet map updated as well, I'm just going to move that up a little bit, hit I on my keyboard, select our default shader, and scroll down in the channels list to Wet Map. And you can see there is our updated logo. So that's the brand new Layered Painting Project and Unproject tools in Mari 1.4. One of the cool new features in Mari 1.4 is the addition of this color space toolbar you can see here at the bottom of my screen. This, along with the implementation of Open Color I/O, is going to make color management across different applications and different projects much more simple. Now what I'm going to do for the moment is run you through a few of the options down here on my color space toolbar, beginning on the very left hand side where we can toggle on and off our color management. Now as soon as I turn this on, our army case is going to get a lot brighter, and this is because our input color space is currently set to linear, and I know for a fact that these textures were painted in an sRGB color space. So I'm going to click on this list and select sRGB from the drop down, and as soon as we do that, everything will return to as it was looking previously. Now zooming along this list a little bit further, we have the next button, which is Select Color Space Configuration File. Now this is a file that describes everything about the open Color.io color space that we can simply select, and once that is in place, everything else will be set up for us. In this case, we're going to go along to the very next option, which is going to allow us to select a custom LUT to use. Now, of course, LUTs are extremely important in visual effects when you want to match CG elements or textures to a shot background plate. So I'm going to click the button to open up the menu, at the bottom of which you can see all of the industry standard LUT formats that Mari supports. Now inside of here, I'm going to come up to my LUTs folder, click on my Mari demo LUT, and with that in place, I'm going to come down to the bottom and click Open to update the colors in our project to represent that LUT. Now with this in place, I'm going to zoom along a little bit further, and inside of here we now have View Transform. Now this is a viewer LUT that we can apply into Mari, currently set to sRGB. The other option we have at the moment is Rec 709, though of course this can be extended even further by editing your Open Color.io profile. Next to that we have Component, currently set to RGB. This allows us to view just the R, G, B, or A channels, or alternatively just the luminance. Obviously if we set that back to RGB, we reset the view and view all of those channels at once. Finally, on the right of the toolbar we have the gain and the gamma settings. So this is interactive control over how the texture is being displayed in your viewport. It's also worth pointing out that this gain value is in fact an exposure setting, which can be extremely useful if you're working with HDRI imagery. So that is the brand new color space toolbar and implementation of Open Color.io in Mari 1.4. Mari 1.4 introduces the Triplane shader module, a module designed to make texturing objects such as this one much easier. Now obviously to texture up this army case with our lovely camouflage texture, you're going to want to texture the top, the front, and the side. However, if you do this in a projection paint system, you're obviously going to see a lot of stretching, and it's not going to give you a lot of control should you want to change that texture later on down the line. Now the Triplanar module overcomes this by giving you control over the front, top, and side image directly within the shader module itself. So you can of course choose a different image for each of these orthographical projections. However, in this case, I'm using the same image for each one. And within that, we get control over different aspects, such as the repetition of the texture, the rotation of the texture, the offset or translation, the scale of the texture, and probably most importantly, the most intelligent part of this shader module is the fact that we control the fall off. So where the side rolls into the top and where the top would roll into the front. So we don't see any hard edges along the side of these projections, we get this nice fall off so it looks like a continuous texture running across the whole object. And of course, because this is a live shader, it's very easy to go in and update these images. So for instance, I could come and hover over the viewport. I'm going to hold down my L key to bring up my image palette. I'm going to grab my bottom camouflage and drag it just over the top of this thumbnail, which will replace it. Now at this point, I can very easily, just by clicking and dragging, swap out the other two projections as well, and we've completely changed the design. On top of this, at the very bottom of the triplanar shader, we have a blend mode, meaning that we can use this to affect existing diffuse layers within our shader too. Finally, on top of all of the goodness that is the triplanar shader, we of course also have a masked version as well. So that is the brand new, extremely powerful triplanar shader in Mari 1.4. As well as introducing the ability to have masked filters within the shader stack itself, we can also now mask filters within the filters menu at the top of the program. Now before I do this, I want to make sure two things. First of all, by using my brand new I hotkey, I'm going to go in and make sure that I have the channel that I want to adjust selected. So in this case, diffuse_main. Now I also want to take this opportunity to show you the lips mask that I've created for this as well. So I've just painted that in pretty much on the fly. So that is the mask we're going to be using for the filters. So again, using my I hotkey, I'm going to go into that and select my comp. I'm going to ensure that we have diffuse main selected. I'm going to come up to the top and click filters and select hue. Now at the bottom of this palette, we have a brand new mask option. So I'm going to pull this off to the side quickly. And down in this list, I'm going to select lips_mask. And now when I make any changes, it's only going to affect that section of the model. So that is the masked filtering functionality available to you within Mari 1.4. Based upon your feedback, in Mari 1.4 we've introduced an updated environment sphere shader module. This allows you to use an image such as this spherical map that I've got here, along with a blend amount, full off start and end, to add an environmental reflection covering the entirety of your model. Now, whilst this is extremely useful, something that you might find yourself doing in production is to mask this effect by a painted reflection map. Now, we actually have a reflection map painted up, so I'm going to use my I hotkey to show you guys that one. So I'm going to make sure I'm on my default shader. I'm going to scroll down to wet map, and there it is. So we want this reflection to appear in the sections that are white or grey, and not to appear in the sections that are black. So I'm going to go back to my comp shader by hitting I, and then selecting Mari 1.4 comp. And then in my shader module list, I'm going to come down. I'm quickly going to disable my environment sphere to get rid of that effect. Come down to add new shader module. And as you may have guessed, we have a masked version of this module, masked environment sphere. Now I'm going to add this in, and we quickly need to add in the same image into this module as well. So I'm just going to click and drag from one thumbnail to the other. And at this point, if I go down to current channel and select wet map, you can see the reflection is really only appearing in the sections that were white in our mask. Now at this point we get the same fall off start and end that we can set up and use to ensure we're only getting those reflections exactly where we want them. So that is the environment sphere and masked environment sphere shader modules in Mari 1.4. Mari's image-based paint tools are some of the most powerful parts of the application, and in Mari 1.4 we've added a new tool which makes using them even easier. So I'm going to head over to the left-hand side and grab my Paint Through tool. I'm then going to hold down L on my keyboard to access the Image Manager pop-up and choose this red triangle. So with that in place, I'm going to zoom in and paint this down onto the object. And you guys might want to spend a little bit more time painting this down. But with that, I'm pretty happy. Now, what I really want to do at this point is see that painting with respect to the entire object. So ideally, I need to zoom out. However, if I zoom out at this point, because the buffer is essentially stuck to the screen, the image gets bigger as well, which is not what we want. So I'm going to zoom back in to replace it back to where it was before. I'm then going to come up to the left-hand side and grab the new Zoom tool. The Zoom tool allows you to zoom the camera out from the model, but the buffer remains the same size. So actually zooming out from both here, and you can see that I get to see my painting with respect to the entire OBJ. Now up here in the tool help, you can see that not only do we have zoom, but if I middle click as well, we can pan this around to view different parts of the object. This is also a keyboard control, so you can hold down Control or Shift and use the minus or plus keys to zoom in and out of your painting. So that is the brand new Zoom Buffer tool within Mari 1.4. So the next feature I want to introduce you to is the addition of a few brand new, very useful shader modules over here in the shader stack. So I'm going to come over to my comp shader, click add new shader module at the bottom in here, and come over and we have diffuse brightness contrast and diffuse HSV. Now if I was to bring either of these in, so let's choose the HSV in this case, I'm going to click OK. It'll sit over here in our shader stack, and it's going to allow us to adjust the diffuse component only of our shader from this point downwards. Now of course this is extremely useful, however what might be more precise is using this with a mask channel. So I'm going to get rid of my diffuse HSV module and say goodbye to our green ogre. I'm going to hit the I key on my keyboard, and inside of here I'm going to quickly switch back to my default shader and show you guys the eyes mask channel that I've created. Now you can see that the geometry of the eyes is pure white in here, but every single other thing is black. So we want to adjust only the eyes within our shader. So with I still held down, I'm going to come back and go to my comp shader and then release the I key. So I'm going to come over to my shader stack, add new shader module. I'm going to zoom down to the middle of the list, and in here, of course, we now have the masked versions of both the brightness and contrast and the HSV tool. So in this case, I want to increase the brightness of the eyes a little bit. So I'm going to bring in the masked diffuse brightness contrast tool and click OK. That's again going to sit over here in our shader stack, and I'm going to make sure that I turn the mask texture from current channel down here into eyes mask. And with that done, whenever we adjust these values, it's only going to adjust what was the white section of our mask. So two very useful brand new additions to our shader modules. One of my favorite features about Mari is the fact that almost every single thing can be hooked up to a customized keyboard shortcut. And in Mari 1.4, we've made this even easier. So I'm going to quickly set the clear painting shortcut by coming up here to Edit, Shortcuts, and what you'll see is that we have a brand new Search Actions box and Lookup Shortcut box. Now the actions in this case are the descriptive names that you can see down here on the left hand side, and of course the shortcut is actually the keyboard shortcut combination. So I'm going to search actions up here for clear painting, and what we'll see is that as soon as I type in enough, it's going to find it and I can quickly get to that shortcut. So I'm quickly going to double click this and hit the / key to replace, click off to set it, and then OK. And that is the brand new search bar in the shortcuts panel in Mari 1.4.